Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Richard Amaral. I am a psychologist here in Ontario, Canada, and I've been doing some interviews with some of our associates at psychologyforgrowth.com. And today I'm really looking forward to speaking with Diana Thiessen. Diana is a therapist, a clinical associate, and has a variety of interests, but one of her passions lately has been working with people who are neurodivergent, people with autism, people with ADHD, and today we're going to go take a little more of a deep dive into that topic. So I'd like to welcome Diana. Diana, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, as I am Diana Thiessen, and I'm honored to be here today to be part of this interview. I have a particular interest in neurodivergency and autism, and I'll be talking about the similarities, differences, crossover between them, and how I can help parents and individuals who have autism.
Perfect. Great. So, first off, why don't we talk about this topic of neurodivergence? Because, I hear a lot of it, but I was wondering if perhaps you could elaborate on that a bit.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I come from a biology background, and we hear people talk about diversity in the ecosystem, and more diversity, the better. And I believe that's true of human population having neurodiversity. So our many people are neurotypical, and that's the dominant neuro presence, but the neurodivergency can be in things like autism and ADHD.
Mm.
I have ADHD and have learned to use that as a strength. And as I work with my clients, I like to work with their strengths as well. Also interested in autism because there's different ways of looking at autism, but again, I try to work with their strengths because neurodivergent people have strengths that are not generally recognized by the neurotypical population. If we
Mm.
can focus on understanding those strengths and helping those individuals function appropriately in society, that I think that will benefit us all.
Thank you. Yeah, you make some great points, and I love how you're able to tie in that biology background piece because it does speak to, just the importance that diversity has. If we look at just the ecosystem, it's so important and of value to have differences in nature, and as well as with the human brain, right? Just that there's so many strengths, so many attributes that every individual brings to our world, to our lives, and yeah, it's important to celebrate that. Um,
Yes.
and I think you also make a good point there with the ADHD piece. That's another reflection of neurodivergence. So I was wondering, going back to the topic of autism, um, what is it that perhaps some parents should be looking for, or even adults? Because I've had a few adults come into my practice as of in the last couple of years, wondering if they have autism. And although I don't do assessments for autism, I often do some screening and then refer out. But what are some of the signs, some things that I should be looking for people with autism?
That is an excellent question. And uh, working on the theme of diversity, each individual has different aspects of autism that may be more prevalent in them than in others. One of the more typical presentations is having a special interest in something,
Mm.
whether it's video games or bug collecting or painting or like a certain type of clothing, or like we think they're obsessed about it, but it is something that completely absorbs their thinking or their time. And that can be very distressing to teachers and to parents because we think that they should have a more rounded background. Uh, that's one thing. Sensitivity to taste or touch or like even the tags on the back of
Mhm.
clothing can be extremely irritating to someone with autism. Repeating things, also known as echolalia, they may be repeating the person they're listening to, which helps them process that information to their memory. They may repeat things to themselves, like when they're reading, to make sense to, again, get it into their memory from short term to long term memory. Sometimes repeating actions, like it might be twirling hair, drumming
Mhm.
fingers, repeating sounds. That is known as stimming or autostimulation. It is a way of calming the amygdala. These actions can be rather disturbing to the parents or to the teacher, but it is actually a way of self-soothing. So
Mm.
that's like another typical action that people with autism have. Not in everyone, but these are some of the key features.
Mm. Right. So yeah. So what stood out for me there is a sort of sensitivity to different senses, uh, but also I think it's a really good point that um, even with being neurodivergent, that they make attempts to soothe and calm themselves through these behaviors. So it's like
Yes, that's right.
it's the body is looking to put itself back into balance. Uh,
Yes, that's a good
um,
way. Yeah,
I know, Diana, that one of your previous career, you were a teacher before you
yeah.
became a therapist. And so I'm just curious about ASD and the presentation in the classroom. Not only that, but also perhaps what teachers or even some students might might benefit from knowing if they have a classmate uh, with ASD or who is neurodivergent. What advice or what strategies do you think that perhaps they could implement in the classroom?
Well, one of the first points I mentioned about having special interests, that individual could go on at nauseum to
Mm,
neurotypicals with the information that they know about, say it's trains or computers or photography. And if a teacher or classmate can be patient with listening to them or to ask them more questions, if you want to know something about that topic, they will be able to give you answers. So to honor that specialty in them would be very helpful. And sometimes the repeating of words can be disturbing to others in the class. So if there's a way to accommodate that child to be in a like one corner of the classroom so that they can just repeat to themselves when the teacher's talking, so it's has minimum disturbance to other classmates. That can also be helpful. Students who have ADHD, it can come out that they cannot sit long and they need to be up and moving. So if there's any tasks especially in elementary school, where there's maintenance to do in the classroom, or emptying garbage cans, or taking recycling down, yes, they share the activity, but if you can assign the higher activity levels to someone who has ADHD, that can be very beneficial as they try to keep them moving. They need to move. They can only sit for so long. And that is where an overlap of ADHD and autism can mingle, because
mm.
both neurodiversities have that to some degree in common.
Yeah, I have seen that in the literature, and even just sort of anecdotally in my sessions, is that there is this comorbidity. I always mispronounce the word, but the comorbidity between these two different diagnoses, that having ASD often presents along with ADHD. It's not that one causes the other, but they often overlap. You see a lot of parallels between the two. And some people are often diagnosed with both. Um, so in the therapy session, What are some of the things that you might do with the client? Like, what are some of the things you find is important in helping someone with ASD who comes into the therapist's office?
That's a really good question. And as a teacher, I'm very used to trying to relate to the students in their interests, whether they're neurotypical or not. So I would try to determine the special interests that the person with autism has and relate that to any other parts of treatment. So I have a particular client who's very interested in nature, living things. So am I, because I'm a biologist, and I try to relate things to his understanding using nature. But if someone was interested in computers, I would use that to help explain therapy. It really depends on what they like. So I think to try to determine the special interests is one of the key ways to start
Mm.
therapy.
So definitely one of the first stages, right? We're building a relationship with the client,
Yeah.
and I think you make a good point: is finding what this special interest is about. As a great way to build rapport with the client and establish a good relationship there. And then afterwards, are you looking at maybe teaching social skills? Are you looking at, occupational goals? Are you looking at managing, any symptoms like anxiety, sadness? What are some of the other directions you take in working with someone who has ASD?
Yes, that's a great set of questions. A lot of people with autism have difficulty with reading social cues.
Mm,
So, and having the ability to have conversations. So, with a client like that, I would try to focus on conversation starters or how they can relate to somebody else, or try to because they have difficulty with social cues, not reading like someone's face, whether it's like rolling eyes or like looking away or showing signs of disinterest, and yet they continue on with their special interest conversation, and teaching them to recognize that,
mm,
or guiding them to recognize it, role play, uh, so that they can better recognize them and how they can then turn the conversation over to the other person. So that would be a social skill. With having the career goals,
mhm,
uh, it would be a matter of conversation about what do you think you can do with this particular interest, because there are many applications for a particular interest, whatever that is. And I'm really good at coming up sort of spur of the moment with ideas. That's just part of, and I have ADHD. It's part of my good spontaneous thinking, and that's the strength with
mhm,
people with ADHD. The mind is always going so
mhm,
quickly,
mhm,
and go off in different directions that
mhm,
um, thi- thinking of autism and ADHD, uh,
mhm.
they can do that too.
Okay, okay. And I think, this touches also upon the value sometimes of an assessment. Is that because an assessment can a little sometimes really pinpoint some of these challenges, some of the strengths that the person has, and that can guide them in exploring some career opportunities.
Yes.
One thing I was thinking, Diana, as you were talking, on this thing of neurodivergence, and especially around maybe, in the context of parenting, is I think a lot of times a parent gets really frustrated when their child is unable to communicate and don't know why. Um, and I think it speaks to just that it's not the child's fault. It's not that the child is doesn't want to communicate, doesn't want to socialize, but it's just that they just have difficulty doing it. And to them, it's a big challenge. And I think sometimes we take for granted just our own social skills and how easy it might be for us to read social cues and body language. But that for a lot of people who are neurodivergent, they really struggle with that. And it sounds like one of the things you do in therapy is to teach some of those social skills, some of those basic skills to improve their social functioning. So I think that's a great point. Um, how about uh, just adults? Well, one of the things I've been hearing about is ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder. I was wondering if perhaps you can talk more about that. And, are things really on a spectrum, like on a straight line? Like, is there different degrees of autism? Is there anything you can say about that?
Oh, yes. I have lots to say about that. There used to be the thinking that in autism, it was a scale of severity.
Hmm.
The newer thinking is that it's on like a color wheel. So if you've ever seen the color wheel, it's like the rainbow in a circle, and they divide that into the different strengths, and the high support needs or lower support needs. I can show you on screen share the color wheel if that would be helpful.
Sure.
So I'd like to share this current vision of it's called the autism spectrum, but it's a color wheel. So if you look around the wheel, start here with interoception. This is their ability to sense hunger, uh, or like their body sensations, whether they need to go to the bathroom, they're too hot, too cold. And it can range from very low support needs or very high support needs. So they may need to be reminded that it's cold, put on a sweater, or check with them, do you need to go to the bathroom? So that would be a high support need. Others are fine with it and don't need that support. Um, Emotional intensity. Now, this is really important, I think, for parents to know. Some kids can be very quiet and don't need support in that, and others can be, feels like off the chart, like excessive meltdown, but that's because they feel very threatened or overwhelmed in the situation. And the best thing a parent can do is to remain calm and to try to either talk to their child, or the teacher talking to the student, assure them that they are safe, they are there to help them, and ask them what do they need. It could be just to sit in a corner and be quiet, or they may need a device, because a lot of people with autism have some sensory need. There's also fidget toys and all kinds of things, but that can help regulate the intensity. And some parents struggle with autism as well, but they may be undiagnosed. So you've got two dysregulated people, and that can be very challenging. The communication differences, it can be they like to look at people or they can't look at people. So they may be talking to you, but they're looking away because that's too intense for them to have eye contact. And that can cause social interaction, problems with social interactions. And relationship differences, if they feel they're being rejected, that's called rejection sensitivity, and they can get very upset and dysregulated by that. Like if someone says, "You're not my friend anymore," that can just send them into a meltdown because they're so afraid of being rejected by people. And executive functioning, very true in ADHD as well. They want to do something, but getting it from thought to action is very, very challenging. Some people can benefit from medication, others not. But it could be, you could be so hungry and not be able to make a sandwich, or needing to go to the bathroom but can't find the bathroom, or it's just, again, taking the thought to action.
Mm.
The spins, that's the special interest needs, wanting to investigate. And I can see people with autism being fantastic in research, because they have this interest. They want to know everything about it. So as a career later on, that could be a suggestion. There could be career planning towards that in their special interest. Stimulation, I mentioned earlier, it can be like just nail biting, hair twirling, rubbing, soothing, all kinds of different things. And the exteroception, exteroception is being able to sense the outside world. And that can be very challenging. They can be very sensitive to things or very low sensitive. So that temperature change could be unbearable. It could be too hot. It could be too cold. And the proprioception, I think I'm saying that right, is judging where your body is in space and maintaining balance. Um, Too fast of action can upset them. You can get off balance very easily. So again, it's all in terms of high needs or low needs, and if the support needs that they may be fine in some areas, but really struggle in other
Mm.
areas more than a neurotypical person.
I really like this diagram because it does show sort of like just that diversity of some of these behaviors, but also it really does take removes this sort of high low, like more less of a continuum, but really more of a full picture where we get to see all these different behaviors in the individual and then what makes them, you know, so unique.
And I also believe in the diversity part of it is the nature. I mentioned diversity is good. We would not have survived as a species, people with autism and any neurodivergency, if it didn't fit into the ecosystem. So
Mm,
there is a role for people with neurodiversity. And it's only modern society where in the last 150 years, industrial revolution has changed things. People who were violin makers or shoemakers my thought, could very well have had autism because that was their specialty. That's what they went to. Now we have machines that take over that, and we're trying to take a neurodivergent person and force them into a neurotypical world. So I do not try to take my clients into a neurotypical, make them neurotypical, because it's impossible. And I, again, try to build on their strengths.
great, thank you. Yeah, that's a great point. I really like that insight regarding, how historically there've been society, we've welcomed people with uh with different interests, and they may have been looking back, may have been on this spectrum, but that they had such an important role in society and in helping to meet so many of our needs because of their specialized skill. So that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
That was excellent, Diana. Thank you for showing that. We're going to wrap up the interview, and I want to know if you had any closing thoughts, anything you want to share.
Yes, thank you for asking. I would like to state that some people prefer to be called autistic rather than
Mm,
I have autism. So it's up to you to try to ask them which way they like to be identified and let them decide. I
mm,
just try to be respectful of all terminology. And I also want to say, because you've asked how we can help people with autism or autistic people from a teacher point of view, a parent point of view, student point of view, in the school systems, autistic people are integrated into some of the classrooms, and these are autistic people with very high support needs. The thought is that it will help autistic people integrate into a more
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
neurotypical society. But I think the stronger point is it helps neurotypical people understand and work with autistic individuals regardless of their age. And I think that's one of the best ways we can all get to understand autism.
Great message, and I really like how you put that. That's right. How we all have benefit to learn. We can all benefit from living with others who are neurodivergent, and there's so much to learn, and they have so much to teach us. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. Thank you. If you enjoyed this interview, one of the things I really appreciate about Diana was bringing up was, especially this last point has to do with relationships, right? Our relationships with classmates, relationships with our children, relationships with each other, with all our strengths and all our challenges. And relationships is also one of the things discussed in my book, The Promise Wheel: Psychology for Growth and a Balanced Life. You can pick this up at Amazon, where I provide a whole bunch of strategies on building relationships with those who are different from us and those who are like us. And so, Diana, thank you again. If you
You're
would
very
like
welcome.
to more information on Diana, and perhaps you want to book a session with her, check out our website, www.psychologyforgrowth. Click on Our Associates, and you'll see Diana's profile, and you can click on the link there to send her an email, and we can book a session with her. And yes, thank you, everyone. And I hope to see you here next time on Psychology for Growth. Take care.